For years, the digital underground was ruled by a shadow empire. They were known as LockBit, the most prolific ransomware group in history, a name that struck fear into the hearts of C-suite executives, hospital administrators, and government officials from London to Los Angeles. They didn't just operate in the shadows, they built a brand. They were the king of ransomware as a service, a slick, professionalized criminal organization that provided the tools, the infrastructure, and the extortion platforms for a global army of hackers. For them, cybercrime was a business, complete with help desks, marketing campaigns, and an arrogant belief that they were untouchable behind the veil of Tor and their hardened dark web infrastructure. But then, the tide turned. In early 2024, the FBI and an international coalition of law enforcement agencies launched a secret counter-offensive that didn't just breach LockBit's defenses, it humiliated them. To understand the scale of LockBit's operation, you have to look at the numbers. They were responsible for a massive chunk of all global ransomware attacks, targeting critical sectors like healthcare, education, and transportation. They were a hydra. You cut off one head, and they simply grew another. They thrived by outsourcing their dirty work to affiliates, effectively washing their hands of the initial intrusions while reaping the rewards of the ransoms. The security community had been playing defense against them for years, constantly patching vulnerabilities and trying to stay one step ahead of their encryption routines. But the Federal Bureau of Investigation, working alongside the UK's National Crime Agency and a coalition of 10 countries, decided that defense was no longer enough. They launched Operation Kronos. The strategy behind Operation Kronos was not a typical smash-and-grab raid. It was a sophisticated, months-long game of psychological and technical infiltration. Law enforcement didn't just want to take down a website, they wanted to dismantle the entire ecosystem. They quietly infiltrated LockBit's back-end infrastructure, watching the hackers, mapping their connections, and, most importantly, learning how their platform functioned. They gained access to the administrative environment, the place where the hackers managed their victims and their data. This was the ultimate violation of the criminal's sanctuary. On February 19, 2024, the hackers woke up to a nightmare they hadn't anticipated. The FBI and its partners didn't just shut down the servers, they hijacked them. When the LockBit affiliates tried to log into their dashboard to manage their attacks, they found themselves locked out. And in their place, the law enforcement coalition did something unprecedented. They seized the group's public-facing leak site, the very place where LockBit posted the stolen data of their victims to shame them into paying, and turned it into a billboard for their own defeat. The aesthetic of the takedown was a masterclass in psychological warfare. The site was replaced with a law enforcement splash page, followed by a countdown timer that mocked the group's own tactics. Every day, the agencies published fresh intelligence on the site, effectively naming and shaming the hackers. They released the identities of affiliates, shared the details of their operations, and even offered the stolen decryption keys back to the victims for free. They took the hackers' weapon, the threat of public exposure, and turned it against them. The message was loud and clear: we are inside your house, and we are showing the world exactly what you've been doing. The impact of this disruption was seismic. Not only did they dismantle 34 servers and seize over 11,000 domains, but they also recovered over 1,000 potential decryption keys, offering a lifeline to hundreds of businesses that had been held hostage. The DOJ unsealed indictments, putting names and faces to the aliases that had operated with impunity for years. It was a massive, public dismantling of the LockBit myth. The group's leader, known by the alias LockBit Sup, was suddenly forced onto the defensive, scrambling to reassure his network that the breach wasn't as bad as it seemed, while the entire cybercriminal community watched his reputation evaporate in real time. But the reality of modern cyber warfare is never that simple. In the aftermath, LockBit did what these groups always do: they attempted to regroup. They shifted to new infrastructure, they tried to rally their remaining affiliates, and they claimed the law enforcement action was merely a temporary disruption. But the damage to their brand was permanent. The king of ransomware had been dethroned, not by a better firewall, but by the very thing they feared most: a coordinated, global effort to expose their weakness. The FBI's war against LockBit signaled a fundamental shift in the strategy of digital law enforcement. It showed that the era of passive defense is over. We have entered an age of aggressive, offensive counter-operations. The authorities proved that no matter how secure a hacker thinks they are behind their Tor relays and anonymous cryptocurrency wallets, they are always vulnerable to human error, intelligence work, and the sheer persistence of a global coalition. This operation also served as a profound wake-up call for the corporate world. It highlighted that even the most professional ransomware syndicates are fragile entities built on trust among thieves, and that trust can be shattered. But for the victims, the takeaway was different. It emphasized the vital importance of reporting attacks to law enforcement early. The only reason the FBI could provide those decryption keys was because victims had come forward, shared their data, and allowed investigators to map the enemy's terrain. The story of LockBit and Operation Kronos is a reminder that in the digital world, the fight is never truly won. The hackers will always evolve, they will find new vulnerabilities, and they will build new platforms in the dark corners of the web. But for a moment in 2024, the hunter became the hunted. The FBI proved that the unkillable empire was, in fact, remarkably mortal. And as we look at the future of cybersecurity, that is the most important lesson of all. When you stop fearing the hackers and start dismantling their house, you realize that their power was never in their code, it was in our silence. And as the coalition proved, the silence is finally coming to an end.